Sweet. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It's a special day everywhere in the universe, obviously, because it's May 4th. Um, I got my Star Wars shirt on, of course, repping. So we're gonna do this webinar I'm super excited about because this is kind of the style of webinar that I've always wanted to do, where it's basically very interactive. Um, the one thing that I love about CGIB is when they have events, it's very interactive. Some may say chaotic, but it's pure gold in my opinion when you get to actually hear from other advisors. So we're super excited to allow basically people to talk and we can interact and we can have more of a discussion today. So now kind of house rules are going to be that the concept is going to be that I'm going to present some things that we're working on or we're looking at implementing. And then I'll kind of do, and there's 5 different topics that I'm looking to do. And then we will do, I'll do kind of a pitch, if a short pitch on the concept. And then I'd love to kind of open it up to the floor and get feedback like, do you know the product? Do you think the product's good? Is it something you as an advisor see value for your clients? Or do you think it sucks and it shouldn't be there? Open and honest feedback. We purposely did not want to have the product providers on the webinar so that we can kind of have free to converse and kind of get some open and honest feedback, because I know you guys are all too nice if they were here presenting. And so what I ask is there should be a little way that you can put up your hand, so you can click the little hand button, and then I'll unmute you and you can kind of give me your thoughts, and then I can just let people who put their hand up, I can unmute you so you can do it that way. I think that's the best way that we're going to do it. So let's get into it. So I think most of you know me. I'm Steve McEwen. I'm a co-founder of MyHSA. Prior to MyHSA, I was a group benefits only advisor here in Calgary. MyHSA, we've been around kind of officially since 2013. And we like to say we really launched in 2016 after our newest version, after we worked out the kinks in 2016. And the idea here is just to present some ideas and get some feedback from you advisors. So here's the 5 topics that we're going to look at. We're going to look at group pool products, hybrid disability, and I think it's kind of known in the industry as ASID, ASID. There's a mental health platform that I wanted to share conceptually to see what advisors think about that. Private medical insurance plans. There's a few different vendors out there that do it, as well as a diagnostics only plan that I've seen out there as well, or that we could have access to. And then as well, group RRSP. Yeah, so we're going to start with group RRSPs. So as you know, so we've done flex plans, group pooled products first, sorry. So we've done, since we've started, we first focused on HSA plans. Then we moved into flex plans, so allow an allocation between an HSA and WSA. Then we did kind of what I say is a light version of ASO plans, but we've seen a lot of growth in all of the areas. And essentially, what I'm seeing in the industry and based on our growth is there's a lot more desire for self-insurance in the health, dental, vision field. So, and what that looks like can mean a few different things. So it can be an ASO only type plan or an HSA. The one thing that tons of advisors ask us about, like almost daily at this point, is what about adding insurance to it? So we've started to build this out, and what we're going to be able to do is we can basically quote pooled lines. So life, AD&D, CI, short-term, long-term disability, we'll be able to run and quote those product lines. We're not going to do any virgin groups. And the idea here is kind of that it's going to be pooled products alongside of some sort of self-funding for the health and dental. We've got 3 insurance carriers lined up, and that's actually going really well, from the quoting process to the actual benefit administration. And we want to be able to basically quote and then administer any products that the client might need. Just going to move this here. And this would include online enrollment using MyHSA, ongoing benefit administration, and then we have the billing capabilities as well too. And if you think about it from our standpoint, this isn't a huge stretch for us, because we essentially, we are a claims payer because of an HSA, and we TPA other products right now as it is. So we also bill, like we take care of the flow of money from the company to the employee in the form of claims. So it's not a huge stretch for us. But we want to make sure that there's a few things that we're super clear about. One is that we're not trying to become a full-blown TPA. There's a lot of great TPAs that do that functionality right now. And really, we only want to TPA the pooled products or the wraparound insurance around the self-funding. So we think and we hope we're pretty good at the self-funding portion, but then to have everything in one spot for the employer and employee, we think would be very nice. Now, we've also said that because we are huge fans of fully insured plans as well. So for every carrier that we're working with, it will be a-okay that you might get a quote through us, through a carrier, and we can present pooled quotes, but you might go to that same carrier and get a fully insured quote. Totally fine. It makes sense. You might want to compare what self-insured plan looks like compared to a fully insured. A-okay with us. So you don't have to worry about, you know, if we quote us, are we going to block the market to actually work with the carrier directly? Whatever works best for you. We can also do block arrangements. So this is actually how we got into it. We had a lot of advisors come to us and say, I've got a block. Could you guys, and in my block, I always have a health spending account or an ASO, and we use you guys. Could we potentially just do it all through you guys? That's what started the conversation. So we'll actually be able to do a specific block arrangement where you don't even use kind of the quoting functionality. And we can actually pick and choose. So if someone wants us to administer the block, but they want to let the insurer do the billing or invoicing, we can turn one thing off, turn off one thing. So basically, there's going to be tons of flexibility in that offering on what, and then you can decide kind of what works best for you. Along with all of the pooled products, you'll be able to add on, and we can kind of put together proposals for all of our existing auxiliary products. And some of the things that we are looking at are going to be the rest of this presentation or this webinar. And then just kind of a note on what we're working on from an ASO standpoint is we are looking at and currently building out TELUS Health. So we can have point of sale direct claims and direct pay at pharmacies and dental. So that's coming alongside for both the health spending account and the ASO. And then that will allow us basically to then build out true full-blown ASO plans after the fact. And then finally, the other thing we're eyeing up is stop loss, because I do think once you have the self-funding, there's an element of stop loss that's needed. So all that being said, I'd love to get some thoughts, some feedback on that concept, on what we're working on. This is the first topic. So if anyone has anything to say, I'd love to hear kind of what you think, or if you've got questions. No one? Oh, there we go. Okay, I gotta go to the right spot. Anthony, there you go. You should be able to talk. You might have to just unmute yourself too.
Unmute. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, very good, Steve. Appreciate it. I think you know, it makes it very easy that we can do it right through you if someone you know. But I guess my question is, why would you have an issue with Virgin groups helping with the pool? Because often, if someone, you know, we've had the example where someone has a very small budget, and you just say, okay, we're going to give you everyone in HSA, and we want to build a pooled benefits around. Why would you have an issue offering pooled on Virgin groups, which should actually be the easiest or the least trouble? I mean, Virgin groups, the issue is the health and dental utilization.
So you make a good point, and I guess we could look at that. I'm wondering from a carrier standpoint, and this is me asking you guys, to be honest, would a carrier have a problem insuring for, like, say, life and long-term disability on a Virgin group for, say, someone with some experience there?
There's always usually no experience, to be honest, with pooled benefits with small groups. So, and there shouldn't be a worry, especially with pre-X's in place.
Right. Okay. Yeah, actually, to be honest, now that you say that, I don't, because yeah, we're not doing health, dental, or the drug stop loss. So I couldn't, to your point, I don't know why we'd care, actually. So I can double check with the carriers too to make sure that they're okay with it. But my guess is they would want, because for them, this is a way to get at small businesses that aren't really on their radar, right? So we always tell people everyone wants to go after small businesses in Canada, and the insurance company doesn't necessarily have access to those small businesses. And we always say, you don't know who they are because they probably have small HSAs with us. So we're actually a way for them to get at it. So to your point, yeah, I'll double check. And we're not doing drug stop loss. That's one area where I could see them wanting some history, but for just life, AD&D, CI, or disability even, yeah, they'd probably be okay with it. And then Alan, good point, depends on the industry, but that's okay. Like, we know with each of the carriers, so Alan's just saying depends on the industry, but each of the carriers is okay. We know ahead of time, basically, what industries they don't want to participate in. So that's not a big deal at all. Who would handle the stop loss? I'm going to hold off on that one right now. We've got a few different options that we're exploring. So I want to I'm going to wait on that till we firm up something. We want to get this other stuff out in the market first, and then I can do something on that. Just going to make sure I'm not missing any. Can you tell us, Scott's asking what carriers we'll be using? I'm not going to share that quite yet. And just so you know, to be fully transparent, like, we're going to be probably implementing new groups. We've got a few kind of that are okay with us launching with them June 1st. So this is probably coming sooner than you may expect. So once we shore up the functionality of it all, because it's part of it is built in the system, we'll share exactly what carriers we're working with. But we do have 3. I'm just waiting on full-on confirmation from the third one. 2 are already in place and being built. So I just kind of want to announce them all at the same time. Cool. So does anyone else want to jump in there, or do you want me to move on to the next topic, I guess? I'll wait to see if any hands go up. Okay, oh, there's Alan. Okay, Alan, allowed to talk. You might have to take it off mute and then you fire away.
Thanks, Steve. So you were talking about if we got a quote from you with the carrier, and then we can also go to that same carrier and get a fully insured quote. So what would happen with the rates? Are the pooled rates going to be better with a fully insured product versus what we get from you? I would imagine it would be.
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine it would be too, but it kind of depends. So because that's like, we don't want to kind of cut any avenue off, like insured or self-insured. So I think that's a discussion, because you're going to have clients that definitely will lean more towards self-insurance and they're okay with a slightly higher pooled rate. When I was an advisor, one of the strategies that I would do is I would do flex plans. We did it in-house on a crappy paper / software system, but I would do a lot of, for small, like kind of up to 20 lives, 30 lives, I would do flex and then just do the pooled products. Like I would go to the carriers and just do pooled, and it was slightly higher, but the companies that I dealt with loved the flex plan so much that there was no problem with it. So it's something for the advisors. You're going to have to consider both avenues with different pricing, but totally makes sense that will be there for you. Okay, well, if that's it, and I mean, we can jump in anytime. I'll move on to the next product. So group RSP, we've done flex plans for a long time on the system, and there's quite a few advisors that use the concept where there's an HSA, a WSA, and a group RRSP that the employee can allocate at the beginning of the year. We've talked to every robo that's come to market in the past 10 years, and they all tried to dabble on the group RSP side. And every time we tried to work with them to potentially just tie in and offer their product, it was always lacking. Like they didn't have the deferred profit sharing components. They didn't have, like, it didn't feel like a true group RSP product. The other problem that we had, and to be honest, it's a 2 or 3 carrier dominated market. So a lot of advisors that did do group RRSP, they weren't willing to move from a Manulife or someone like that. They kind of trusted, they did all their business usually with one of the carriers, and they weren't willing to move. Go ahead if someone's got something to say. No, okay. So what we recently talked to a company that kind of pitched an idea that we didn't know what advisors would think of it. And so what they kind of do is, sorry, step back. One other thing that we've seen is a lot of advisors don't touch the group RRSP market at all, and really have no desire to get into that space, which is fair. I just wonder how many of their clients might actually be more interested in it, and they're not hearing about it because their benefits advisor isn't comfortable promoting or talking about those products. So my thought was, well, what if there is someone, a company that can provide kind of the true group RRSP experience, and what they offer, what they're kind of proposing is a referral type scenario. So if the advisor A doesn't want to dabble in that area, but they clearly have the relationship, would the advisor be open to a referral situation where essentially you would get paid a percentage of assets under management but you are removed from the group RRSP process, and basically they can manage that side of it. The unique thing that they came to us about was that if there was an opportunity there with advisors, but we could build in like a little bit, and it's not much, but a little bit of front-facing capabilities to make the connection for the employee, if they're on our system, to their group RRSP component. And what they do is basically, once they're handed off and in the group RRSP space, it's as you would think. So the employee goes through, completes questionnaires, does a risk profile, and then what they have is they have curated essentially 9 portfolios that go on the risk continuum. So the more risky and is up here, and the less risky down here. So depending on how you answer that, one of these 9 portfolios is for the better. Their argument against the traditional carrier is there's no fiduciary responsibility. Usually with a big carrier, all of the funds for the most part are all that carrier specific funds. So it's kind of like, what's best for the client. And a target date fund might not necessarily be perfect for that individual where they are in that stage in life. So for example, you might be 55 but if you're in a target date fund and you haven't saved a dime for retirement, you're probably in a low risk scenario where you might need to be in a little bit higher risk because you need to make better returns. So their argument is necessarily just the default target date fund always isn't the best solution, which made some sense to me. They're also agnostic to the fund. So it's not an all ETF and no actively managed funds. So they can do a Vanguard ETF in their portfolio, as well as being in Calgary, like a Mauer investment fund, which is what a lot of the largest pension funds use. So they could actually use both of these as well. And the big thing for me was CAP guidelines. Like, do they follow it? And they follow it kind of religiously. Every year, the questions are asked with the plan administrator going through the portfolio offerings, and it's all documented and everything like that. So that's the group RRSP concept. So I'm super interested to hear if is that even on anyone's radar? Does anyone care about that? Interested to hear. Jay, okay. Hey Jay, and then you just have to unmute too.
Unmuted. Hey Steve, thanks for having us. Thanks for this discussion. So I do like the concept. I know today you're not seeming to divulge names and stuff like that. There's still a lot in the background to be done, I'm sure. But I do group RSPs, but for small, really small groups, they are tough to do sometimes. There's demands from the insurers for certain minimums. So it'd be interesting if this can apply to smaller groups. That'd be the first part. Second part I would want to know is what their service promise and expectations are. I would want to know if they're actually brokers or they work with brokers, because then I would be, a little reticent to use the service. So that's, potentially using this. The other option that I would like for those of us who do RSPs is it would be really nice for an employee to just be able to make a deposit to an existing group RSP if possible.
So do you mean like an individual RSP, or make a deposit to a setup group one?
Yeah. Manuia, Sun, Canada, whatever. Be able to deposit to one of those in a group rather than an individual RSP.
Interesting, yeah. And that's like, it's kind of one of those things, and this is where Tim and I again, everyone who knows us, we're pretty open and honest, but Tim and I go, like, basically we're better off just to wait till one of the big guys will actually work with us. You know what I mean? So it's like, because when I was an advisor, similar to you, Jay, is I like the group RRSP stuff, but I was just like every other advisor. I only used Sun Advantage. Like that was my, and then as long as the minimums were there, you know, a-okay. And I know how easy they are. This is the part that always frustrates us, is we know how easy they are in the implementation. For us to send funds into a Sun Life Group Advantage, all the plan administrator is doing is uploading an Excel spreadsheet with banking information. Like, it's such easy information to flow the funds there.
Yeah.
That part of us goes like, well, this is great, but do you just wait till one of the big boys will actually work with you?
Well, you know, on that note, and I get it, you know, creating the APIs is not easy. I've heard from a lot of different developers, and the insurance companies are constantly moving target for some of those issues. But to that end, if you guys, like, yes, keep this option that you're talking about, absolutely, again, depending on who it is and how they work. But if you're going down that road and it's not a huge extra step to be able to do those type of uploads, then on our end, when you guys announce that you have the ability, we can start pushing our wholesalers as well to say, hey, we want to be able to do this. And maybe we can get the pressure going both ways.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm just looking, Chris, good points. Yeah, and the minimums, because I could have, yeah, because, and what about robos? Just out of your, like, do you think there's a place in group for the robos of the world, the Nest and the Wealthsimple and stuff like that?
You know, I haven't experimented in detail with any of them. I haven't seen set up for a group a really great one yet, but I haven't looked at all the options, so I can't.
Oh, okay, yeah. And I have dabbled a bit, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll back out in case anybody else wants to say anything and
yeah.
Any other comments on it. But thank you for creating this.
Awesome, Jay. This is wicked. Okay, and Michael Wartzman, I'm gonna just allowing you.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great. I just wanted to throw commentary in on this one. We have tried working with the two robos that you just mentioned, actually, Wealthsimple and Nest, and you know, our experience has been that they can't support administratively at all on the group side.
Right.
So
even a Nest, like even a Nest that's in the space, I think more planted.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a gong show there the last couple months. So my experience has been that I'm gun shy with those types of providers right now. But the idea that you're floating here is a great one. And I guess, like Jay said, it really would depend on, you know, who's the name behind this solution that you're, you know, toying around with. But anyways, I just wanted to give you guys some feedback on the robos being shiny objects that sometimes don't, you know, work as well as you'd hope they would.
Interesting. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's not overly surprising just because it's hard. That's not their bread, and it was never their bread and butter. I know Nest has gotten more into it. I think it's an interesting market, but the other thing too is you're dealing with people's retirement, and more importantly, the employer's offering it, so it's almost an added risk. Totally. And as an advisor, it makes sense to me. Like, you're not going to mess around with that. Like, that's where the Manulifes and the Suns, you know, there's some name, you know, they've been doing it for a while. And it's
and anecdotally, you know, like the plans that we have with Nest Wealth are all being transferred over to Manulife Future Step right now because they're small and they're, you know, 5 employees or 10 or whatever the case may be. But there's just a lot more trust from an employee standpoint that the money's being managed by one of those institutions versus a startup that doesn't respond to emails on time, for example.
Got it. Yeah, no, for sure.
So I just wanted to share some of that feedback as it relates to this product.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you for that. Okay. Yeah. And that makes me, yeah, this makes me wonder if it is a lot to do with the actual provider and what they provide, because we can always do this sort of thing with the actual provider, and we can kind of flush out a lot of the interest. So what we've told all of these providers is exactly that we're doing this because we've been burned on adding products that we think is a good idea, and then we bring it to advisors and they're like, not a chance, we're not selling this. So we're like very gun shy on bringing in new providers, and we say like advisors got to want this and they got to want to sell it, otherwise we're not going to be any good at it either. So okay, that sounds like it's very provider dependent on this one, which makes sense. Awesome. Okay, cool. If anyone else wants to jump in, I'll and I think, yeah, okay. Okay, I'll move on to the next product. Wicked feedback. So this is one I know that there seems to be a little bit more buzz in the industry from what I've seen. And hybrid disability might be a terrible name because I know from an advisor standpoint, you might say like, this is not disability. It's something very different than what we would all consider traditional short or long-term disability. But I also think it's the best way to just explain it in a quick reference. So accidental serious illness, disability. Basically, the one thing that we find, especially for the small to mid-size, is that a lot of employers like the idea of disability for their employees, rightfully so. However, I'm curious because to me, from somewhat of an outsider, it seems to me that this is a huge problem for many of you in regards to renewals right now. Disability rates are from what I hear going up. And I guess one would argue, is there a stability question where this product might come into play and fill a void potentially? And essentially, the concept is that there's a monthly paid benefit at time of incident for a set period of time. So the best way that I understand it is there's essentially two different policy components in the payout. One would be kind of a traditional accidental death and dismemberment. So if someone accidentally dies on work site or off work site, then a payout occurs. And then as well, they've got a dismemberment. I don't know what else to call it, but a meat chart, because I know that's what we always call it in the industry, which is super creepy to anyone not in the industry. But they basically have your standard chart for what you can get paid out from the AD&D side. And then essentially the second component is a critical illness component, where when you're diagnosed with something and it's like the traditional, there's a set of 24 illnesses, then what they do is they essentially pay you a monthly amount until the period expires. So when you get a quote from this carrier, and I know there's a few that do it. We've talked to one of the carriers that does it. You can choose your benefit period. So it can be 2 years, 5 years, or to age 65. And then they get paid the monthly amount. The unique thing, what I liked about this is, so if LTD rates are crazy expensive for a very small group, or they don't want the risk, because in my opinion, there is a risk. Once you offer LTD, there's a big financial risk from the employer standpoint, insurers as well, but you're kind of in the game to a lesser extent, which can be scary for a small group. With this, it can, I believe the minimum group size is from like one, they've got two products, 1 to 5 would be their small group product, and then 5+ is their normal or larger size group product. But it's basically no experience required. There's the underwriting's just based on demographic information. There's no variation by industry, so there's no industry, because basically the concept is they can use critical illness, your probabilities of critical illness based on age, where it's not really dependent on industry. And obviously, because it's only covering critical illnesses, as well as the AD&D part, the cost is substantially lower. Now, my concern with this, obviously, is especially in COVID, and we're seeing the mental health of people, is that wouldn't cover any of that. But my question to you all is this a product that you do see a fit somewhere in the market, maybe for very, very small groups, or really everyone, clients you think are still looking for traditional long-term disability or short-term disability for that matter? So I'd love to get your feedback on that. Jane Adler said, great idea for hard to insure industries. Would like to have a mental health option. Good point. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, Jay. You can talk if you want.
Hello again. So, these days, mental health, of course, is such a huge conversation and increasing. Not necessarily, different people have different opinions, different business owners have different wants, needs, opinions. It'd just be nice if it's a box that we can click and it can be priced into as an option.
So it's almost like, so you would want that mental, because then you might as well, correct me if I'm wrong, but you might as well just quote traditional long-term disability instead of this if you wanted the mental health component, right?
But what I'm hearing from you is that this isn't supposed to function for the long run like a traditional disability plan. I may have misheard or misunderstood. If this is going to be a limited pay or limited pay with a lump sum payout at some point, rather than a continuous pay product, those suffering mental health, it would suck to leave them stranded.
And it is just because it's a very good point, and I think it's an important one. It does have the option to age 65. So like Alan, your point, there's 2 years, 5 years, and then to age 65, I believe, is the 3 options. So you can go, more like a traditional disability scheduling. So if someone, gets an illness and they can't work to age 65, then they should be able to claim this to age 65 in a monthly manner. It just, I think where the gray area of paying claims based on mental illness is the area that they don't have to deal with, so they can price it cheaper. But it's one of those things, exactly what my fear with it is, do employers want, like, it's just like a no-fly zone. If there isn't a mental health component to it, is there any interest out there in this sort of thing? That's what I'm curious about.
For sure, there would be interest. And I know in the US, this type of product is a thing without coverage for mental health. So, each business is its own entity. It has its own philosophy, its own way of being. But right now we're all talking about adding mental health support, and this is a product that removes it. So,
right,
just that little extra tick box, if you can do it, again, would be a nice to have. If you can't do it, well, that's okay too.
Yeah.
There are other options, and I know you're not trying to be everything to everyone.
No, for sure. Tyler Scott's asking if it's a Fen church. I'm pretty sure it's very similar, to be honest. Like, I think there's 2 or 3 providers that offer this sort of thing, and I'm pretty sure that everything is very similar. So yeah, I would assume, again, I haven't seen Fen churches, but I assume it's very similar to what they're doing, just because I've heard the name out there. Yeah, Chantel's saying the injury coverage. Yeah, and then the other thing too, I know from an advisor standpoint, we wondered about was if it's remotely seen as anything as a disability product that has a mental health associated with it. Is there any liabilities for the advisors if someone does want to go on disability for mental health related things? This policy obviously wouldn't cover any of that. Is there a big fight waiting to happen for advisors that almost would scare you away from promoting the product? Which I kind of think Alan's point is saying, so, you know, worry about selling a product that doesn't cover mental health disabilities. It's kind of like, do you want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, even if there is advisor or companies with the philosophy of we're a-okay with that. We're just trying to protect them from kind of injuries or illnesses, and that's it. I think you can talk, Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the other concern is that, you know, if you sell this product to your client, you know, the education is so crucial, and if they don't remember what you said about disabilities, certain disabilities not being covered, you're going to end up, you know, the potential liability, potential lawsuit against you because of, you know, did you educate them properly on the coverage? So that's my concern as well.
It's a really good point. Yeah, and those are the type of things that. Anthony, I hear you laughing.
I was going to, I am. I'm saying this is so CGIB. All we worry about is what we're, I guess the question is, if you're replacing a traditional LTD plan, you know, and then employees go, great, I'm saving money, and then the claim comes in. So, you know, it's like anything. If this is your LTD plan to start with, it's LTD. But if it's replacing a traditional LTD plan, then it becomes, well, what's different?
Yeah, you better
You have to
cover.
be very, very careful when you do employee meetings or employee announcements.
Right.
And then what happens when if employees balk and say, I don't mind paying the extra $10 a month or whatever.
Yeah. Jay, I think you put your hand up there.
I did. I realized that it was still up from before. Sorry.
Okay.
You know, an interesting place where this can apply would be an example of, I've got a group that I've come across that has a 5-year benefit period. And I had it quoted to extend to 65. And that extension is massively expensive. It'd be nice to be able to give them something. So a 5-year waiting period, and at least they've got an accident or serious illness benefit after a 5-year disability. That would definitely help companies like that who can't afford to do the upgrade to a full age 65 traditional definition.
So just conceptually, because I know that is one strategy that you can use with this. So you would basically have a traditional long-term disability policy in place with a 5-year benefit period.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could pick up as almost a top-up accident and sickness benefit to age 65 to pick up after that policy. Do I have that right in my head?
Or even just an accident only, you know, something for these companies that we do run into occasionally who prior advisors set up that way for whatever reason.
Interesting. Okay, and that is Chris Gorey's chatting. Come on, Chris. You know, we know you want to talk here. I better see a hand come up from Chris Gorey. There it is. Okay, you might have to unmute, but then you're good to go, Chris.
All right. Apologize. This ducks out. My router just died, and I just got back from buying a new router.
Oh, good.
Acid, nothing musculoskeletal, nothing mental health. The way that Paul and Bob have been positioning it is you can either sell it as a top-up thinking RBC's GSI, or you can do it as an LTD replacement that for a group that has really crappy LTD rates, and kind of when you're rehabbing the LTD rates, put this in for a 2, 3, 4-year window and let them rehabilitate their LTD rate. The stuff that they've sent me is a comparison, very, very high level comparison between LTD and the CI product, the acid, and there are huge gaps between the two. So you really, to cover your you really need to provide even more detail than what's been provided so far from Camden.
Got it. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, and that's the reality of it. And like on the slide, I'm kind of saying like the fear with it is it's not remotely the same coverage to an LTD. In my opinion, it has to be thought of as something completely separate. But if there's a market for it, I don't know.
You know, can I butt in here again?
Yeah, for sure.
The thing I would say is that a lot of advisors won't be on this call, won't go through a lot of your education. They're just going to have access to this at some point. So on your end, if you're going to develop this, push this out there, you just should make sure that you have really incredibly clear documentation that they could use to cover, the CYA for yourself and for the other advisor, and employees and owners sign off sort of thing. I understand this does not cover the following types of things. I'm not a lawyer, but I would speak to a lawyer.
No, that's a very valid point too. And for us, being a tech company, we need to do things that scale, to be honest. So if it's a complex product, sometimes it's just we're not the best fit for them either, because because of all the things that you're talking about. So it's good points, all really good points.
Just one more thing on the accident type payout. One of the things that I've had a lot of success with is in more dangerous type industries, separating the life and the AD&D. And it's an inexpensive way to get, if there's a major accident, to use your verbiage with the meat chart, to get a lump sum of cash in employees' hands. So depending on how you're going to structure your life, AD&D, and if you go down the road of ASID, maybe if you can disconnect the life and AD&D and allow people to opt up there, that might be another way of looking at it.
Interesting. Awesome. Okay. I knew this one would kind of get some feedback going, because it's starting to hear more and more of it out there. So if there's anything else, I will move on to the next product. Okay. So the number one thing, obviously, given the environment, we hear about mental health platforms every other week. A lot of the ones we hear about, we can't work with because they don't have scale across the country, to be honest. So there's certain things, because we've got advisors across the country, and if we're going to add someone, we want to kind of make it for everyone, with the exclusion of Quebec, obviously, just comes with its own challenges. But the one platform that really caught our eye, because they're such nice people, it's a company called Together All. And they've got what we thought was an interesting delivery. So what they're doing is basically, it's peer-to-peer community. So it's not Zoom, it's not videos, it's not an EAP. They specifically like to work alongside of an EAP or other paramedical if it's available to the employee. And basically what happens is the employees come in to a anonymous peer-to-peer, almost like a chat room. And it's moderated by I can't remember the exact type of practitioner that they use, but basically everyone, if they come in and ask a question or they talk about troubles that they're having in life, they will get an answer by one of these professionals, guaranteed within a certain amount of time period. But it does also allow for other members to kind of have a conversation with people. So it is very peer-to-peer, but monitored 100% at a very, very high level. And they have an operating business quite large in the UK, another country. Like, they're big. They've got thousands and thousands of members. With the peer-to-peer, the other thing that they offer is the traditional CBT type programs. So the idea here is peer-to-peer is used most often, but if that person wants to engage with a CBT program, they can do that at their own will. So like what they say is it's hard for people, if you just offer these programs, the CBT programs, people don't voluntarily go and work through everything to complete the course. So it's a really good nice to have in their opinion, alongside of the peer-to-peer, but the real bread and butter. So the really cool thing, which I actually think this is really cool with EAP programs, even in Canada, their model in the UK is one that they basically, the insurance company for the disability, they pay these premiums because they obviously can cut off what could be a disability, a long-term disability claim, if they use the program. So you can get reduced long-term disability rates if you have this bolted on and available for every employee. That's the UK model. They are open to that model here in Canada. I think it's a fantastic model. Or you can actually just use Together All as a platform, and the cost is extremely low, like the same cost for an EAP for a month. This is that same cost per employee for the whole year. And if you think about it, peer-to-peer in a chat room functionality, you can scale that. So they can basically, having the resources, the professional resources to monitor those, it's very much scalable, so you can keep your costs really low. The other thing that I liked is there's no utilization, because the cost is so low and it can be scaled, there's no concern about utilization. So I know EAPs are very underutilized, and there is a sticking point, right? At some point, if they are utilized too much, it becomes a problem. Where I like this concept, where it's kind of like you can flood this thing, and because it's peer-to-peer and it's basically pooled with all the thousands of people that are all on the same chat room, it's like the bigger it gets, the more scalable it gets. So the utilization is not even like it's not an issue. It's a non-starter. The other thing is the moderators can actually, if you want to, and I don't know if this is good, bad, or what it, how it falls in my head, but they can actually, if you wanted to start that the moderators could see what benefit plan that employee has access to, you can share it. So if they have an EAP, if they have certain practitioner coverage in an insured plan, or in our case, a health spending account, they can actually help point them to different areas that might be better suited than in the peer-to-peer network. So yeah, that's the concept. I don't know if how people feel about that, but I'd love to get some feedback there. We only have one more product after this too, just so everyone knows. Oh, Frank, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So LifeWorks, Homewood, all the EAP providers, to my knowledge, offer this type of therapy. And what it is basically it's self-directed therapy, where the employee walks through coursework, homework, And it actually teaches them to become more resilient is the best way that I think of it, so that they can kind of work on themselves to encounter the mental stresses of life versus necessarily having to sit down with a therapist or a social worker or whatever type of practitioner for every incident. Jay say more mental health options are appreciated. Group size together all. I'm trying to think if they had a group size minimum. I'll find out for that. Just taking notes. I feel like they didn't, but I'll double check that. Okay, so and I'm wondering, like, is the mental health side of the benefits world, is it getting flooded now with too many options? I'd kind of pose that question to everyone else, like with EAPs, and I know telemedicine, and is there still a desire for employers to see what's out there and keep offering anything that will help their employees? Okay, everyone's going quiet now.
My unmuted, I'll say employees talk about it, but then actions speak louder than words.
So are you seeing, Anthony, do you think that it's a nice idea, good concept, but a lot of employers essentially aren't pulling the trigger on adding the offerings?
Well, I did get someone to do add an EAP just recently, actually 2 clients. But again, they ask for things, but then, when you give it to them, then they're slow, as I said, to actually implement it or to set up meetings and things. I did with one large client. Another one, they were happy to do it. I had another one, well, we'll talk about this next year again. So, it's a cost thing. And, I'm always surprised they don't want to spend $2-3, or it becomes such a big talking point for an EAP. But everyone's asking. There's no doubt it's pulling the trigger that I find a little bit time.
You're presenting on it, you're talking about it, but it's not necessarily converting into they're not buying it, which I can understand. Like COVID, for many, you're not looking to add costs on top of a benefit plan right now, like it's, so that
But
makes
a lot of it is retrospective. They all ask for it after the fact. We have an employee, they're going through some issues. What can I do? Well, you didn't listen to me the last 5 years to do something.
For sure. Go ahead, Jay.
What I've found this year is that talking to employers about not just their employees, but how their employees' families are also affected, and an employee's child or spouse who's having mental health issues is going to affect the employee. And a lot of employers are going, oh, yeah, I heard about so-and-so's wife or husband or whatever. So that, I think really what's going on. So the first part of your question, I don't know if you see it in the chat, I put it there. I don't know that there's more options, but there's more discussion, which has brought the number of options to the table. And maybe that's making it sound a little bit more confusing. The big thing that I'm finding is that, so I've put on tons of EAPs this year by talking about employees' families and creating that realization. But if we're not educating the employees, if you don't make some sort of video, some sort of handout for your employees to better explain what the EAP is and privacy and how to access it, it's not going to get used. So whatever you end up doing, it's about the support material, and like things like I would bet 80% plus of advisors still don't know what CBT is, and they're going to think that's marijuana, right? So yeah, education.
Question, I'm just curious, if people are implementing new EAP, is that going through the carrier provided EAP, or are you going as a add-on directly through an EAP provider that you like individually?
In my case, the answer is yes. I'm doing both. Basically, it's a matter of, in my case, talking about if they want any reporting, it's going direct. If they want ease in adding, deleting employees and paying bills, it's going through the existing carrier.
Got it. Okay. So there is some functionality that it's all in one spot, does play a role in it.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Awesome. And just so everyone knows, if you do have, because Jay, you came to mind, anyone living in Alberta through the government has access to Together All right now till the end of the fall, I think is when it's up. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like free telemedicine provider. If I was an advisor in Alberta, I'd love to know kind of any free offering that the province is picking up. Together All has it for Alberta right now as we speak. So, okay, that's awesome. Heather's just mentioning, yeah, people being motivated to access the resources is a problem. Totally makes sense. Kind of what Jay's saying, it's even once you implement it, getting them to actually use it is a challenge in itself. And I find too, even with EAP, is it covers so many different things that it's almost hard to decipher what you can and use it for, because there's so many different aspects to it. Okay. Perfect. I'm just gonna make sure I'm not missing. Yeah, even if they know about it, they're frozen. That is the one thing that they do find with the peer-to-peer, because it's just such an easy thing to go and type in something, that it's not a phone call. It's just super easy to use to go in and type something, and no one knows who you are. There's thousands of people. Yeah, I think that it makes sense to me anyways, that it's a little bit easier to get into the network and kind of talk about your problems. Yeah, so anyways, that's the mental health platform that we're looking at. So that's good feedback. And then, yeah, but it did make me think of CGIB, like just how the functionality of, it feels like a Slack channel almost. Okay, so private medical insurance plans. We've talked to 2 different providers of this, very similar, few different nuances between the two. And then I would almost lump in a diagnostic services only plan in that. But as we'll kind of describe, very different offering, but kind of in that same realm of private medical plans. So I think many of you would have seen or come across these before. I would assume the target market for this is the owners or as an executive plan. Jay, that might be one of the ones we're talking about. Yeah. And really what it is it's a hybrid between a kind of an out of country catastrophic. So there is coverage for traveling if you were in the US and were hospitalized, ICU, ambulance, there's coverage for that. But the real kind of benefit that I think that gets most people's attention is the full coverage that basically if you get diagnosed with something, and I think the one that comes to most people's mind is cancer, then basically the minute you're diagnosed with something, you get diagnostics, specialists, surgeries, treatments, and if that is in another country, because they have one of the best hospitals in the world, think Mayo Clinic, that sort of thing, then it goes and gets dealt with, and it's all paid for. The options, the one cool option that one of the provider does have is that you could include in all of the major Canadian cities is a once a year medical, like full-blown medical assessment at one of the private clinics. So like a Coatman, Medcan, I'm trying to think of ones across the country. So you basically once a year, as part of this policy, you get to go get a full-blown medical or assessment every year. The cost, it's obviously a big ranging cost because it goes from $40 per month per employee up to like 200. It's age banded. So as you can imagine, the older you are, the cost gets up there. You can choose different maximums and deductibles, and it's really all over the map. So you can have like a zero deductible plan, increments of 1,000 up to like a $20,000 deductible. Okay, this is good. So Jay's saying this has been talked about for years, very little uptake. Yeah, they're appreciated by those who have adopted them. I'm sure those that, unfortunately, if they've ever had to use them. But what we hear, again, this is all, I don't know that much, but they are expensive. So it's kind of a hard sell. The other thing that we've heard is that they're expensive. And then once you've paid the premiums for a few years, renewing them can be a challenge, because if you haven't had to use it, which is good, it's insurance and you don't actually want to use insurance, you've just seen the money go out, you don't really see anything that comes back. This is where I think that yearly assessment does make some sense, because essentially it feels like you're getting value. It's kind of like the CI where there's a cash reimbursement after 25 years. It's kind of like you're getting some value back from it every year, which I think would help it renew and continue to renew as you go. So that's the concept there. So I'm just curious, yeah, if people have used it, heard about it, thoughts, is there any value in it for small to mid-sized clients, for executives? Yeah, I'd love to get some feedback on it. Heather's saying people, high paid executives like law and accounting, they seem to go directly to medchems. The other product too on that note is the diagnostic services only. So the idea here is it's only for the diagnostic portion. And I have heard of a few advisors really say that this has worked well. I know BBD's, I think, has done really good with this product. And essentially, if you're supposed to go see a diagnostic specialist and you can't get in after, I think it's like 17 days or maybe even 30 days, then this policy kicks in and gets you in right away. Sorry. It's only for diagnostic services though. So once you do get the diagnostic services, the treatment is on your own. But that's an option as well too. So like we have talked to a few people about that. So it's another policy or product that we could look at as well. The discounts. So Jay, the discounts they get on the annual physical makes the coverage almost no cost. So, and that was the one thing that we were wondering is if the policy price, if it's about the rough cost or close to the cost that it would take to go get the physical assessment each year at the private clinic, if it's close, then it's a no-brainer, or it's an easier sell in my opinion. But we haven't compared what the cost would be at like a Medcan for just the assessment. Because if it's relatively close to that cost, then I think you'd have a lot easier time selling it. Our one thought or concern about it was because now private medical seems to be much more popular, are all of these executives already members, and usually they'd be members above and beyond just an assessment. So it's kind of like a yearly membership. We have HSAs for executives that are just cover the MedCan costs. So they just use an HSA for that one expense item for their large executive class. So anything? Do I have too many products that I've drowned you all with and you don't want to talk about it? Okay. Okay, that's the last slide. That was it for products. Reach out. Even if some of you didn't necessarily speak up, but you want to hear more about it. The one thing we are doing is for our pooled product, I'm starting to demo it to advisors. I always find, like, we built our platform basically through chat and through advisors and feedback. So I'm kicking it old school with the pooled products, and actually I'm doing demos with advisors just to get feedback, show them the system, see what they'd like to see, if we're missing anything, that sort of thing. So if you did want a demo from that, you could reach out to me. And I've been doing lots of those for advisors. And yeah, this was awesome. I like the conversation piece a little bit more than just me spewing and talking the whole time. So awesome. Yeah, Jay, I'll give you a demo for sure. So yeah, so that's great. Thank you everyone for taking the time today. May the 4th be with you.